where I got to with my kind of solutions, or the things that I felt the system could do or could look to embrace, was a real reimagining of what fairness means. So a shift from kind of individual values to more collective values, and I think this is really where we need to untangle some of the notions of non-material values and how where we place them within the public policy system, but also what does it mean to to make commitments to future generations, or to prioritize that. And one of the other things that came up through the research was this authorizing environment and the kind of increasing tension between the what is being grabbed as kind of by the political economy, and what are these kind of long-term policy issues. So there is an issue around around governance, and what does it mean to think in an anticipatory way and think about the risks and uncertainties, but also to act in an anticipatory way. So what does it mean to create a more dynamic system? I do think there's an important thing, what I've been finding in my practice, getting really clear on the fact that innovation is not just technology. So innovation is all of the layers of the system. So that's decision-making frameworks, the policy toolkits that you use, how you regulate, how you govern. And I think there is a bit of a tendency to rely on this idea that technology will innovate ourselves out of these societal challenges we have, where actually technology is just one part of an innovation ecosystem, and so it's the other bits of it. Creativity is really important here, and kind of curiosity. So the acceptance that we still need to learn, and then that learning happens in different ways. So if you take a indigenous kind of perspective to that, learning happens through observation and experience. So it's not just all kind of at a desk and kind of academic theory. And so I think that some of that is really the expanding how you think about things and how far you can see into the future, and what you're prepared to accept. I think that's a really important thing for kind of futures and foresight, but also that enables you to imagine in a different way, I think, because I do, a lot of people at the moment are talking about this implementation gap issue, but I do really think that one of the barriers to change is this imagination gap. So I think that a lot of people can't imagine a future where we don't have fossil fuel advertising. Is a narrowing of the horizons and an increasingly short-term ism. And I do think some of this comes back to the confusion of efficiency and effectiveness. So this idea of efficiency and growth at all costs really ignores the fact that you know what is the direction that you're trying to travel in, and what are you trying to improve. So I think that is that's a kind of a fundamental to address. I also think that there is a need for more tangible non-material values to be embedded into our systems. And I talk about this in my research is in the context of shifting from kind of individualistic values to more collective values, and kind of people struggle sometimes to understand what that means. But if you take an Indigenous or a Te Maori perspective to this, then even just acknowledging our interconnectedness with nature, and and the fact that the work of the Planetary Boundaries team, that our society and our economy is constrained by the environment, but not just the environment, the health of that environment, and so I do think that's a fundamental reimagining as well, and a shift, and that kind of helps you to move from thinking about very linear extractive systems, to starting to kind of nurture the idea of regenerative systems, which really do help with the notion of kind of equality and addressing kind of fairness and justice. I have thought about how do you change this, and I do think that there is a need for embedding and valuing observation, and kind of foresight and innovation thinking at the heart of at the heart of government. And so I think that there is something in kind of looking to have observatories, which are kind of lighthouses for thinking and research and development in a kind of multidisciplinary way within the system. So a bit like the OECD has an observatory, like if we had those kind of spaces to think and embedded within government, then I do think we would see shifts in mindset and shifts in mandate. But at the moment, there's no shortage of labs or kind of foresight hubs outside of the system. But that doesn't necessarily move us forward, because, I do think there is something in making that function a cog in the wheel, So how do we kind of build the cogs that actually ensure there are safe places, to challenge the status quo, to break things and put them back together in a way that is better. And so I think that's, I think that really is what's needed. And then, how you do that, I think, is contextual to where you are and what kind of mandate you have. So I think that I think that the Welsh Future Generations Act and their commission and their commissioner is a really good example of this. And Australia have just passed a bill to do similar. There are these conversations happening at the United Nations about a pact for the future. So I do think, I think there's, as I said before, there's kind of no shortage of ideas about futures and foresights, but it's actually the mechanism to require the system to acknowledge it and to value it and to do something. So it's kind of almost like the action end of that. Because there is one thing in being able to see and understand, the future risks and the uncertainty, and there's another thing in being able to do something about it. And so I do really believe that it's creating hard infrastructure within your policy system to be able to actually kind of activate on the ambition and the kind of deliver those innovations. Yeah, I think this is an interesting one, because I think there's different contexts, and what does, like, we could spend a whole hour talking about what value means, but I do really support the thinking of Mark Moores from Harvard on this, and the idea that public value is equivalent to shareholder value in the public management system. So this notion of kind of I think the OECD's described it as double additionality, or additionality, so that rather than thinking about just a material or fiscal value, we actually think broader about the kind of social and environmental contribution of that as well. But I think the issue, or the kind of nexus, or the intersection with public innovation, is I don't think we have that mindset, or that we're not holding public value in that way, and not in all of the public policy systems. Definitely, in my context in New Zealand at the moment, I don't. The system is not really thinking, intentionally through a non-material lens. As I said before, the kind of narrowing around efficiency and growth means that some of these ideas of kind of shifting become harder, and the innovations become kind of trickier. I think I was, if you zoom out and think about the kind of drivers for change, it is that gets harder, and that's what I found in my excuse me, in my research. Lots of the people, especially who are within the system, struggle to see what change could look like, and to see where we could go. And so I think it's useful to think kind of topically or in a domain. And so I think climate change adaptation, I think that's where there is a lot of opportunity to create drivers or to utilize the drivers, because there are already some of the preconditions for change, and particularly around the acknowledgement of the need for transitions and the need for transformation. And climate change adaptation takes you kind of naturally into a conversation around economic diversification and resilience, and kind of what do we want the future to look like. And so I think there is something in the kind of practical application of some of these ideas, rather than trying to spread them across the whole system, where you do get an immune response. And what I mean by that is, the status quo or the system does fight back. I find that in a lot of my practice, you can put an idea up, and then it feels like it's been consumed very quickly. But so I think there is something in kind of understanding the landscape and looking for parts of your public policy system where there are the preconditions for change, and so that's that is a kind of a way of kind of assessing where you've got the most leverage, and then kind of looking at those areas as places where you can kind of demonstrate the thinking as well. I think, yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about this, and I think it seems like, Europe is embracing the urgency of some of these challenges faster than we are in New Zealand. Like, I do find that New Zealand has about a 9 to 18 month lag time on some of the kind of global trends, but I do think, as you said before, some of the challenges that we're facing are clearly challenges that we're all facing. So I absolutely believe that we need to, think collectively and collaborate collectively, and kind of learn from each other, and create the safe spaces where where innovation is kind of nurtured, and because the social fabric and the social cohesion, that doesn't begin and end at the borders of countries, right? And so I feel like we do have this collective responsibility. One of the key parts of my practice, my kaupapa, is to to build a capability wake. And so I do think that there is a responsibility to help others, and to work collectively. But it is, I think that, the pressing challenges that you face in Europe are the same challenges, slightly different ones around conflict and immigration and things like that. But the societal challenges, we all face together. And so I think getting to a more collective way of interacting and kind of communities of practice and mutual learning. I think that's that's really important.